Hello and welcome to Now You Hear Me, the podcast that gives a voice to musicians across cultures. I am your host, Martha Betubiza, and before beginning this episode, I just wanted to say thank you so much to everybody who has been listening so far. The podcast is 1 month old, a cute little baby, and I'm so happy and proud of it, and really happy that everybody's been listening and enjoying. And if you have been enjoying it, please like, comment, subscribe, rate, all of those things. That's really helpful to me if you do that. And I'm also really curious about where you're listening from. So please leave a comment or DM me at Now You Hear Me Pod on Instagram and let me know where you're from. For today's episode, we have Naaz, who is a wonderful indie singer, songwriter, artist extraordinaire from Kurdistan and the Netherlands. I found her on Spotify like 2-ish years ago and was just really blown away by her music, especially her music in Kurdish. She sings in both Kurdish and in English, and it's really cool to see how she explores storytelling through her vocal ability, through Middle Eastern scales, through writing in Kurdish, through writing in English, and just this really beautiful cross-cultural storytelling. And it was just such a lovely conversation, and I can't wait for you guys to hear it. Thank you again for listening. I really appreciate it, and enjoy the episode. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. This is so cool.
Yeah, I'm so excited to talk to you. It's just wild because we've been DMing for like 2 years and have never actually met in person. And so, or even virtually like this, like I've only heard your voice on like, I don't know, like interviews that you've done or other things like that. Or literally from your songs. So yeah, it's nice to know you're a real person, except I can't really verify that you're a real person until I see you in real life.
Perhaps I'm AI.
You might be AI.
No, but I was thinking like it just maybe 100 years ago, it would have been so crazy to be able to speak to someone in real time from the other side of the world.
I know.
People would dream of Europe and then Europeans would dream of America, and now they're brought together as friends on a podcast. But it's crazy. Like, we should really not forget how insane it is that we get to talk to each other and see each other.
I know. It is. I do feel really lucky for living in this time for that reason. And like, you know, not just the internet capabilities of being able to like video chat with you and hook up our fancy podcast mics or whatever, but also music as well. And for that to be able to travel across the world and, you know, for people everywhere to be able to discover the music of a Kurdish girl in the Western world.
Yeah, how did you discover me? That's a good way to start things off.
Yeah.
As if it's my podcast.
I know, right? I discovered you on Spotify. I was actually like looking through our old DMs to find our first message, and it was in November of 2022. And I actually don't remember if it was like a playlist or like Discover Weekly or something. I have no clue. But I found your song Azadi. Am I saying that correctly?
Yeah.
And I was like, oh my gosh, killer voice. I have absolutely no clue what she's saying, but this is incredible. And so then I found you on Instagram and followed you and messaged you. And I was just like, I just stumbled upon you on Spotify and I love you.
Oh my God. That's so cool, because I feel like as a smaller artist, you feel kind of invisible sometimes in the music scene.
Yeah.
Especially in the algorithms of huge platforms such as Spotify.
Yeah.
So to kind of sit here knowing that you did discover me through that same algorithm or perhaps a playlist is a very nice feeling. I'm like, oh, okay. So it reaches people. That's really cool. I mean, yeah, I have my listeners, of course, but it's such a cool feeling to know that you can reach people that you don't know and that don't know you, and that it can lead to beautiful conversations such as these. So cool.
Yeah, it is really, I'm sure, very like nice to, because you always have numbers and, you know, analytics and whatever, and, you know, you'll maybe look at those and be like, oh, who are those 600 people in Turkey? Who are those, you know, whatever. And so I feel like it's nice to be able to put a face to some of those people. I'm sure whether that's like from messages you receive online or conversations like these, or even touring as well, and being able to put a face to all of the numbers. must be a really cool experience.
Very cool. Once again, shout out technology.
Shout out to technology. This podcast is sponsored by technology.
Technology.
I kind of want to start at the beginning, just like hearing about your childhood and how you discovered your artistic abilities, because like not only are you a songwriter and a singer, but like you also write poetry, and like aren't you also writing a book or something?
Yeah.
Just insane. But yeah, I just want to hear I don't know. I also feel like this conversation could last like a million hours because I just have so many questions for you. And I feel like a lot of points of similarity as well. But about your childhood, and especially, you know, I'm a child of immigrants, and I feel like I tend to relate to a lot to children of immigrants as well. So, you know, what it felt like to be a Kurdish girl growing up in the Western world.
Yeah, I think one of the reasons why I've come across to have lived a million lives, which I do agree I have, is when you kind of grow up in such an unstable environment and such a place where it's difficult to be proud of your identity, because you're always told that you should be more, you know, like more Dutch because that's where I grew up, or I should be more Kurdish at home, and never more just who you are, you know, like with the moment when your ethnicity kind of defines your purpose in life and who you are and the way people treat you, it will kind of like bring you in very unstable environments, I feel, which happened to me, which is why I've lived so many lives, in which now I'm finally stable. Now I finally feel like I can look back on a year and be happy about my life and have like good memories to reminisce to. But this is quite a new sensation for me to like be like, wow, this time last year was really nice. Usually I would be in survival modus at all times and never be able to look back with joy, but only with anxiety.
Yeah.
So this is a new feeling. My life is like finally stable. But it started off, you know, I was born in the Netherlands, and my family are war refugees. My parents are Kurdish, and they grew up in Kurdistan in the Iraqi region. And they first moved to Iran after the Iraq and Iran war. And then after that, they moved to the Netherlands. So yeah, I was born far, you know, much later than all of that. But obviously, as we know, immigrants don't always get the best treatment. So you are expected to take part of society and move on and just, you know, pretend like your past did not happen, as if it also wasn't done to you, as if it's like your responsibility to just put on that mask and continue. So my parents went through a lot of very difficult things, lots of heavy discrimination, and grew to be very isolated people who kind of believed that the world was their, you know, not a safe place, which they've been proven that it wasn't. And as I grew up very isolated as well. I wasn't really allowed to play outside with kids. Like my mom would be afraid that something would happen outside. So I'd always be at home with my brothers. I have two brothers, and we would just be there and not really have that experience of playing outside with kids or like going to their houses. That hardly ever happened. And they also did not want for their children to have a life in music, which makes a lot of sense to me. It's a very difficult place to be, but kind of the isolation that I had growing up brought me in a position where I felt like I needed to make music. So I was only 5 or 6 years old when I already started writing poetry. And I even have like one of my first songs ever tattooed on my arm in like the same handwriting, like from my little notebook. It says, "Every day you can hear the birds sing." I was 6 years old at the time. And it means like, no matter what happens in your house, just focus on the birds, you know, because it was such a sad household. Like maybe you can relate, like being a child of immigrants, but there's so much sadness and so little community because it's so lonely, you know, because you don't want to make friends, or it's difficult to make friends and surround yourself with people when the world has shown you its worst sides. So it was very lonely in our house, and it was very sad. And, you know, I felt like I needed to focus on the birds, because the birds, they're always singing no matter what's happening in my life. It brought me a lot of perspective. And at one point, as I was writing these poems, I noticed that I started singing them as children do. You sing what you think and you sing what you see. So I started singing these poems and realized, oh my God, I'm a singer. I guess I'm singing now.
Wow.
So yeah, I started just like writing and singing, but I noticed that I didn't really like singing other people's songs. I really wanted to sing what I made. I felt a deep urgency to create things. And I'm speaking of like under 10 years old, you know, like I needed to make music.
Wow.
But we didn't have instruments at home, so I learned how to write music in my head, and this is how I've been making music ever since, like always a cappella in complete silence, making a song and hearing the instruments in my head and then creating them afterwards. So fast forward 10 years, like much more than 10 years later, but when I was 15, 16 years old, my two brothers gifted me a little MIDI keyboard and downloaded Fruity Loops onto my laptop and told me in a very harsh way, everyone wants to be a singer. Now you go and make it happen. Like there's this, everyone wants it. So like you need to do something to be able to get there.
Wow.
So I started like on YouTube learning how to produce music and writing more and more songs and recording them. And making little artworks with my school friends, which were very cool, to be honest.
Wow.
And when I was 18, 19 years old, I started producing my own music again and realized that it was just my own special little sound and that it didn't need to reach the whole world. I just wanted to reach some people with the music.
Yeah.
So I put it out and it went really well. And yeah, I kind of faked a gap year of school so that I could do music and hopefully be successful so I wouldn't have to return to school. And luckily it was. But just to like keep the story not too long, I was 16 when I met my team at the time, like the people who, you know, work with me. And basically every like sad story you could imagine that could happen to a girl that young in an unstable environment could be vulnerable to happened to me. I went through a lot of abuse in that industry until I was like 22 years old. And then when I was 22, I told one of my friends for the first time ever what was happening behind the scenes. And then she told me, my God, you need to get out. This is deep levels of abuse. And I knew, of course, I always knew, but you're always in a deep denial because you want to love the people that hurt you so much because you love them first and then they hurt you. So it's hard to believe that that love that you felt is no longer allowed to be there and that like the anger and the hatred has taken over. And it got so bad, like emotionally, to realize what happened to me all those 6 years that I just completely quit the music industry. Also because it was such a big part of my team, so I needed to fire everyone and I don't know, just be very brave and get out. And I was told the most horrendous things, like you will never have a career again once people know about this. And I was like, okay, cool, but this is not a career. This is
that's not what it's about.
No, this is not what it's about. So yeah, I left, and like the whole marriage thing is not like really a thing. I have Islamic parents, and they found out about what happened to me, and out of like a trauma response, they were like, you need to get married. So it's extremely dark, but then I got married because of their thing. But luckily, you know, after a year of stepping out of the music industry and being in this super random fake marriage, I realized, oh my God, what happened to me? I'm 23 years old and I went through the most terrible things and I've had no way to process it. So yeah, I moved away. I moved to Amsterdam, which is a big thing for a Middle Eastern girl to do, to move away from her family without a husband.
Right, totally.
Because it's like you only become, like you're told you're only a woman until you're someone's woman. And now I became my own woman.
Wow.
So moved to Amsterdam and discovered that where I come from, my Kurdish roots, is a culture that is such an empowering culture towards women. And I realized that just because I grew up oppressed doesn't mean that that is what my culture is. So I started.
That's a huge lesson, yeah.
It was a huge lesson, and I found out about the Kurdish saying "Jin Jan Azadi," which is what my song Azadi is about, which you know, discovered me through. And that means
And that's
women
the
life
tattoo
freedom.
on your neck too, right?
It's the tattoo, yeah. And I got the tattoo during the music video. It's like a woman tattoos my neck as I...
Yeah. Which I
Yeah.
also wanted to ask about. I was just like, what?
Yeah, it's real.
So cool.
Yeah. Yeah, that was my comeback year. I decided I'm gonna come back to music. I'm gonna make music that makes me feel free, that makes me feel euphoric. I'm gonna tell my story through art. I have no idea how it's gonna be received. I'm gonna be fully independent. I'm gonna take matters into my own hands. And then I made some crazy shit like Azadi and getting a tattoo in my neck, you know, for the video. I remember just like I directed the video and I showed it to like the team, like this is what I want to do, and everyone was like, you need to do henna now, so you can't do a real tattoo in your neck as you're singing. You're like, you can't do that. I'm like, what? But this is
was
art.
She actually tattooing while you were singing, or did she do it right beforehand? Because I was like, she's on her neck, she's singing, like, what is happening?
So basically we did extremely zoomed in shots as she was tattooing. And then we did the zoomed out shots as she was fake tattooing, so I could be singing, because obviously my neck muscles cannot move.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it looked like it was happening on the same time. So basically we did 25% of the tattoo each shot. So we did 25% and then we did a singing shot while she was fake tattooing, and then we did another 25%. So yeah, it was crazy, but yeah, I found my freedom back. Cool. I tattooed it on my neck.
Yes.
And now we're still going. Now I'm just like really making the music that I want to make, and you know, surrounded by beautiful people, and have a very intense life story.
Wow. I feel like I have a million reactions to it. I think starting from the beginning, I love when I hear stories of people who just started to create just essentially out of the womb. And I don't know whether you were like conscious or not of what you were doing, but I just feel like even you describing the lyrics that you have tattooed on yourself that you wrote when you were a kid, like that's just a really profound conclusion to come to even as a kid, just being like, oh, you know, things are chaotic, this is what I'm going to focus on, is like I was very moved by hearing that. It reminds me of like, I one time interviewed a friend of mine, Olivia Reed, who I think you'd actually quite like her music. I'll send it to you. But
I know her.
Yeah, she's great. And so she started writing as a kid, and she was saying that she one year didn't know what to get her dad for Father's Day, and so she decided to write him a song. And I was like, what the heck? Like, people's brains just work so differently. Like the way, like me as a 5-year-old, I'd probably be like, let me get him a rock outside. Like I just would not think of that.
So cute.
But she started writing this song, and but she like couldn't write, so she was just singing it out loud while her mom typed it into Microsoft Word, and then and then like wrote that song. But anyway, I just find it really just powerful and cool when I hear of people creating that young. Like, you know, you felt this need to create, but not everybody is like that as a kid. So did you feel like, oh, this is something that is special within me, or was it just kind of like you don't always notice things when it's just a part of you? So I'm just wondering what that felt like.
No, I was a strangely serious kid. I was so serious about it. Like I still have it. I have like folders and folders full of poems that I would like type out on the computer and then print and make like little bundles of them. And I used to write like short stories and then like make drawings for them and turn them into little books. I literally have like a stack of books I wrote as a kid. I still remember the melodies of most of my songs from back then. It was very serious, but you know, once again, as I said, like I didn't play outside with kids. Like I just had you know, I just had myself. Like I entertained myself. But it's an odd thing, because sometimes when I see children now that I'm an adult, I'm a bit weirded out by my own childhood. Just like also how intense my own, you know, mind worked at the time. But but you know, like kids are extraordinary, and you always notice the depth of how important to be able to be a child is, you know, like even as an adult, to be able to let go and have your survival instinct turned off and be like almost like submissive towards life is so incredibly difficult. You need to have safety for that. And I feel like children have that extreme adulthood within them that kind of gets brought out in situations such as a war. As you can see, like during war, children become adults, like they know how to take care of their siblings as if they have parenthood within them, you know. I feel like as children we need that safety to be able to actually be so wondrous of life and be able to be taken care of. But if you feel, you know, kind of by yourself, and I don't want to compare myself to a child in war, like that's not the comparison I'm making, but it's just more like it's more my admiration towards children and how much they already seem to know based off their intuition.
I think you might have said this in your newsletter that you wrote. In one of the newsletters, I think you were talking about, you know, how can we not trust children? Like they're just so pure and they know so much. And I feel like I really related to that reading that, because they just have so much more than I think we give them credit for. But yeah, I don't know. I really admire children.
Yeah, me too. I also think we should call kids less, like I feel like the other day I saw a movie where like a short film, like 2 short films where both child actors played in, and they were playing like so good, like their acting was so realistic. It was just so impressive. And then everyone would just be like, "Oh, you're so cute." And I was like, know. "Oh, stop saying, okay, you can say cute. You're allowed to say cute, but also mention how cool they are and how brave and how talented, you know, it's like so important." I feel like I know a kid is a kid, but don't infantilize a kid, you know?
Exactly. Because on one hand, I feel like, it's like we all say that, where we're like, "Oh, you're so cute, you're so this, you're so that." But yeah, there are a lot more than that. And there are so many kids who are so talented and, like you said, brave and smart and all of that. And so I think our constant reduction to kids, of like reducing them down all the time to like, "Oh, you are just cute," like not very empowering.
No.
I relate a lot to what you were saying about just like being at home a lot in childhood and just creating. And I don't know, my sister and I very, you know, we played with kids in the neighborhood and we had like our friends and we'd go to their houses and things like that. But I think also too, when you grow up with siblings, I wonder if this is your experience, but like, I don't know, you just like want to make shit. Like me and my sister would always like, we would make up really, really long secret handshakes. And then like that were just like so theatrical. It was like a mini play almost. And then like we would also rewrite the lyrics to song. We would make like parody songs, or we would like take a song and rewrite the lyrics like based off of something or whatever. Or like she would like do all these little voices for me because I'm like the youngest sibling and stuff, and it's always interesting to see the way that those like dynamics in childhood play out now, where it's like, oh, now I work within the music industry, and when I was a kid, you know, we used to rewrite lyrics to songs, and like now she is a lot of things, like a writer and journalist and all of these things, and seeing the way that, you know, she would rewrite these lyrics with me and create these elaborate stories with me or take on different characters, and like now she's writing a screenplay. Like it's just always really interesting to see those sparks of creativity from when you're a kid and then how they play out into adulthood.
Yeah, it's really beautiful. I feel like especially when you know someone and then you get to see them as kids or like hear the stories, it's very touching. You can just imagine where they got their traits from and where the love for what they make came from.
Totally. And like with your brothers, it seemed like they were a big force in you discovering your creativity, which is very cool.
Yeah, definitely. What was also very funny is my middle brother, he's very competitive, and we had this big competition going on between us in how many octaves we could sing. So we would just be singing like endless songs of like Mariah Carey for instance, so I could be able to do whistle notes with my voice so that I could beat him, you know?
Wow.
And then we did like measuring how many octaves we can sing based off of like a YouTube video, like find out how long you can sing in this video to sing up, you know? And then but it's really funny because now I always get like the compliment that I really love so much is that I have a very wide range. Like I can sing extremely low and like extremely high. Thank you. But like it's a funny story because I learned because of the competitiveness as children where we were like, who gets to sing the highest, like the widest range. And especially because I remembered like Mariah Carey used to be called like, I don't know if this is true, but they would refer to her whistle register as like dolphin register. And then we would be like, we must become like dolphins, you know? Oh, it was so funny.
That's so sweet. I love that.
But I had this really cool like orchestra performance a few weeks ago. And I remember the conductor was just like, dude, you can sing so high. What is this? You know, have you had like classical training? And I'm like, no, I have not had classical training. I had YouTube training as a competition with my brother, you know? Childhood, man. It's a funny thing.
That's real. And you know what? I feel like a lot of the theme of this conversation is the internet, but like even you saying like YouTube training, it's like so many people who are successful in literally anything, like their training came from the internet, at least in part. Like whether it's like doing vocal scales that they find on YouTube or learning how to play guitar, or learning how to produce or use a MIDI keyboard, or like, you know, whatever it is, it's like YouTube University.
Yeah, I love YouTube.
I love YouTube too.
It brought me a lot. Yeah,
honestly, same. I'm curious to hear about like your creative process, and also kind of whether there's a difference in creative process depending on like what language you're writing in, or how do you tell like what stories are going to be told in you know, English versus Kurdish and all of that.
Cool question. Yeah, so I write most naturally in English. But when I write in English, my creative process...
Would you consider English like a mother... I mean, you speak at least 3 languages. Like, would you consider all of them like your mother tongue, or...
No, I can express myself best in English, especially because as a kid, like when I wanted to speak to my family, like lots of them live in Sweden, for instance, or still in Kurdistan, and it was difficult to speak Kurdish with them because we all spoke different dialects, so we spoke English instead.
Okay.
Yeah, so I kind of like learned how to fully express myself most in English. The book I'm writing is also in English, and I feel like I can just use my words better, you know, when I speak in English. So when I write in English, I don't know, it's like I have a little bit more focus on the lyrics. So I really want to tell a story. And when I write in Kurdish, I really want to tell a story through my melody. So that's when I really focus on finding interesting melodies and notes to kind of touch you, so I can tell a story that you do not understand, but then will feel through your body and therefore relate to. And I feel like it worked really well with the Kurdish songs because it's like so often that people are touched by them but have no idea what the song is about but still get emotional. It almost becomes instrumental music, like my voice is just an instrument because you can't follow the words. And that's very, I feel like water when I sing in Kurdish. I'm just like flowing, you know? There's just all these beautiful notes in the Middle Eastern scale that come out of my throat, and I'm just like, oh, I love the I don't know, just like I love how it hurts. Like there's a lot of pain in those notes, you know? It's very different than the Western scale. And it's very different music to create. So I notice when I make Kurdish songs, they're always a lot more emotional, but also a lot more darker. And I feel like when I make English music, the lyrics is definitely dark, but the instrumental is a bit more uplifting. So it's interesting, in both languages, I become completely different versions of myself. And I think that's a very cool thing about language and how it makes us express ourselves so differently each time.
I'm smiling a lot hearing all of this just because obviously the listener can interpret anything how they want to, but I think it's also really validating when I hear an artist say something and I'm like, oh, that makes sense because that is how I interpreted it, or that's how I experienced the music. And so what you're describing about like people connecting with the Kurdish songs a lot because of the melody and how you're able to play with, you know, the Middle Eastern scale and stuff like that, that is exactly what drew me in to like my favorite songs are your songs in Kurdish, and it's because of the melodies and just how beautiful they are. And yeah, hearing something in like a different scale and hearing your voice and all of the like gymnastics that it does and does so fluidly, like you were saying, like how it feels like water, like that's what it sounds like as well to the listener, or at least to me. So it's just so cool to hear that that's how you feel, because I'm like, I don't know, I feel like, again, you know, people can interpret things the way that they want to, but I think it's just a really cool experience when that is mirrored, and hearing you articulate what I experience while listening to the song. I'm like, oh, cool. Okay, so like that was intentional, or that was, you know, or even talking about like your English speaking songs too, of, you know, the lyrics might be dark, but the production being up tempo and, you know, kind of happier or whatever. And I feel that a lot too when I listen to your English songs, especially with Sirens, where I think I told you this, but like when I first listened to it, I was like, oh my God, like this could be in a movie. And I was just like thinking about like the production on that song. And I was like, oh my gosh, like I see this in like a coming of age film and this and that. And but I was thinking so much of the production side. I think sometimes when I listen to songs, it takes me a while, regardless of what language it's in, it takes me a while to really internalize the lyrics. And so when I was first listening to it, I was like, ooh, like just like dancing and whatever. And then I was like, oh, but like let's also pay attention to the lyrics.
No, but it makes a lot of sense because it's a very there's a lot of cool drums in that song. And I was actually talking to a very cool arranger today. A conductor, sorry, arranger is a Dutch word, but and he told me like lots of people they hear the groove first, you know, they hear the beat first. So and that was interesting because with Sirens, it was one of the first times in a long time since I started producing myself again. And I noticed that I myself also kind of like needed to have like a groove to hold on to feel joy towards, you know? But I also noticed that it was like I don't want to say a one-time thing, but I made Sirens because I needed to make Sirens, because I needed to feel like there's still some big youthfulness within me, even though I am, you know, 26. But like when you've gone through some shit in your life, you feel like youth is for other people, you know, like even if you are young, it's like
that's extremely profound and very true.
Yeah, it just feels like, that's not for me, you know? Sometimes I remember just being 23, 24 and then seeing other 23, 24 years old and be like, must be nice. Can't relate. Won't relate. Totally. Won't even try, you know? Because it wasn't for me. And then I realized that I could still kind of create that innocence of youth through music. That's why I always made music, to feel something. I remember one of the first reasons why I really wanted to make music is because I started to no longer feel something as we went to the toy store as children. I was like, wow, where are the butterflies? I used to get butterflies and they're gone. And I realized that as the older I was getting, my butterflies were dying, and they were turning into like gnawing caterpillars of anxiety that are just like rumbling in your stomach. And I realized that the only thing that can still bring me those butterflies, those youthful butterflies that you only get either when you're in love or you're a child, is something that you can get through music and through certain compositions. And this is why I still like, even though I know people love my Kurdish songs most, but this is why I make my English songs as well, because it's like those are the butterflies, you know, like the types of productions that I make for those songs, they sound like euphoria, like as you say, like they could be in a film. And this is something that I feel is honestly like even if I would make like a completely meaningless song lyrically, it's so important to have songs that make us feel like we're in a movie. So
Yeah.
important to have those songs romanticize our lives, you know?
It gets you through life,
Yeah, it
those
really
songs.
does. Yeah,
Wow.
yeah.
What was the impetus for you trying to get back to making music alone and producing alone?
So I noticed that if I would spend a lot of time with people, I would get very, very tired, even though I like people a lot.
Yeah.
But, you
Yeah.
know, it would just take me so much mental energy. And I'd been through so much regarding to people that it would be hard for me to like trust
Yeah.
someone as I was being so vulnerable writing a song, you know?
Yeah.
And I realized also I'm a very leading person, you know, like when I make something, I hear it, I can hear it in my head. I just want to create it. I don't want to wait, you know, but I also want to be
Yeah.
nice. So I don't want to be like, we need to do this.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then I just kind of like looked back on my lonesome childhood days and realized this was good for me. Actually, it was good
Yeah.
to be by myself. I was creating because I was giving myself freedom to try out every part of me, like to really taste myself, you know, be like what is it that I like, what is it that I enjoy. And then I noticed you know, like last year I got an autism diagnosis, and it just made so much sense to me. I was like, this is why I find it difficult to be with people for a prolonged period of
Yeah.
time, and why it exhausts me so much. And this is also why I've been able to learn so many skills without having been taught them, because it's like my special interests.
Yeah.
And that's kind of like, I know for some people a diagnosis like that can like bring them down, but for me, it brought back all my confidence. Like everything
That's
that I
amazing.
felt I was weird for, like, oh, I'm weird because I feel these things, and I'm strange, and not in a cute way, like in a you will never be part of this real world way, like
Yeah.
you are not made for this world type of mentality, was gone, because I was like, yeah, objectively I'm not.
Mm-hmm.
And that's okay, because now I know. And that's when I started feeling like I am good at what I do. Like I was like, okay, I'm good at what I do. I can do this. Like my insecurities dissolved as I was finding out who I was more, you know? And
Yeah.
the first song I made, you know, after was Sirens, which is why I felt like I needed to put that
Yeah.
out. And that's when I started really producing again. Because, you know, you can feel the confidence through that song and through the other songs that I'm putting out, that there's like no fear anymore for being seen, because I feel like the times where I felt I did not want to be seen was because I could not see who I really was. And
Yeah.
now I know. So now I'm kind of okay with being perceived.
I am really happy you got that diagnosis. I feel like I think people kind of underestimate the emotions, whether positive or negative or mixed, that can come with getting any sort of diagnosis later in life. I think that
Yeah.
when you get that information, it just puts so much about you into context. And you can think about, like, oh, that's why I was like this as a child, or that's why I struggled with this subject or struggled with this dynamic. And
Yeah.
you know, on one hand, you can maybe like mourn for your inner child that she didn't really understand why she was different or what she was going through, but at the same time, like, celebrate the fact that you understand yourself a little bit better now, and you know why you operate in a certain way,
Yeah.
and start to make changes that fit for your life. Yeah, I don't know, it's really huge. What prompted you to seek out that diagnosis?
Well, it was very funny actually. I was just visiting my partner's family. Um, and then I started doing like these back exercises because my
Mm,
back hurt.
yeah.
And then his cousin made like a joke like, "What? She's autistic."
Mm.
And then we all laughed, and then my partner was like, "Wait, what if it's
Are
true?"
you?
And then, you know, I was already at my psychologist, like I already had a psychologist. And then
Yeah.
I did some research, you know.
Yeah.
And what was really funny was that I remember that a few years before, I had some fans at a show tell me that I'm autistic. They were
Oh my
autistic themselves, or they are autistic themselves, and they
Okay.
were like, "Well, you should really look into that, Naz, because when you're very happy, you flap your hands. Also,
Yeah.
you don't look us in the eyes." And I was like, "Oh, okay." But
Yeah.
people flap their hands. This is,
Yeah.
this happens. And then, I started to get all these like memories of things people have told me before in my life, like things that they found odd about me that, you used to be bullied about, but then you find out that you had no control over. For instance, I had like a weird way of running, and I would like always hold my hands in front of my chest, and it just odd things
Wow.
about me. And also, like, even with the abuse I endured, I didn't realize I was being abused at the time.
Yeah.
Also in now I know autistic way, because I just couldn't comprehend that people could also be this way. I remember just 2 years
Yeah.
ago that my friend was like, I was telling my friend about something someone did, and she was like, "But I don't think they're telling the truth. Have you considered that they might be lying?" And I was like, "Oh my god, I've never ever considered anyone might be lying."
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
can I
Yeah.
can read a book and watch a film and be like, "Oh, these people are lying," because you get all the clues. But like in real life,
Yeah.
when I'm with someone, I just assume, like, I just used to assume everything they said. Um, as a kid and as a teenager, I'd always be called naive. But now I know it's like it's not, I find naive now to be like an insulting word, just because like it's been said to me so often at the time.
Yeah.
But like, I told all of this to my psychologist, and she eventually also talked to my family, and then I got the diagnosis, and it was so healing, because I remember I used to blame myself so much for the life I
Yeah.
had. And then it's taken my autism diagnosis to not be mad at the life I've had, to not be
Yeah.
mad at the things I've gone through, to kind of understand that I've, for a very long time, understood life very differently than for what it really is. And that has brought me in situations where bad things happened because I couldn't protect myself at the time. Um, and that's also why I'm so open about my diagnosis, because
Yeah.
I kind of like, I remember my best friend, I told her I want to share it, and she was like, "Yes, girl, normalize it," and yeah, it sounds very minimizing, but I do want to normalize it, because if when I was 16 years old and someone would have kind of like summed up the symptoms of neurodivergency to me, I would probably recognize a lot of my symptoms in there, get, a diagnosis if possible, or like at least
Yeah.
find stories online that would make me feel like I'm not the only one who feels the way I do. And then I would probably have not gone through the things I've gone through, because I would have had community and understanding of myself instead of always feeling like a
Yeah.
misfit. I would have been able to find people like me. And I want to be that, I want to
Yeah.
like, I as a musician, I, as an autistic musician, I do not see myself becoming like, or like even trying to become like a super big star. I just want to make art and, do that. And it's a weird thing for people to kind of accept that not every singer wants to be a star, that sometimes you're just a singer because you love music.
Yeah.
And I want to show that autism is such a big spectrum, so everyone has a different experience. But for me, I just want to show that there's this singer with autism, and she's doing
Yeah.
her thing, and it's possible. And it's not easy, but it's possible. And this world was never made for us, but we can adapt in how much we can, and then after we adapt, we must unmask and calm down and get closer to ourselves, because life can be good if you're a little bit different. It can be good, but you need to make it good by adapting life instead of adapting yourself at all times.
Wow. Thank you for sharing all of that, honestly. I am curious about the music video for Sirens, and that process of creating that and how you told the story through the visual. And I think when you were talking about, you know, your so-called odd way of running, it reminded me of the video, and I was like, oh, like, was that on purpose? Like, I need to hear
Oh
about all of
wow,
that.
actually it wasn't, but that's a good, maybe it was like subconscious thing.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah, what was the process of making that video? And also, who is that actress that plays the older version of you? Because you guys look so similar.
it's insane. She's a really cool and big actress in the Netherlands. Her name is Nazmia Oral. And yeah, it's crazy. We do look alike, and her name is even Nazmia, and my name is Naaz. So in a
Wow.
way, perhaps we are like future and past versions of ourselves. But
Yeah.
yeah, with this video, I was just like dancing in this room. This is my studio. I was just dancing to the song and realized that it's like a song that you can run to. And my best friend, Eva Portis, she was here and she's an art director. And then we were like, oh my God, we must run in this video. And then slowly but surely kind of the idea came out that the song is really about policing your own identity, always looking forward to who you want to be and reminiscing or being angry at who you were, but never quite being in the present moment. You know, really being your own worst enemy and just ungrateful for who you are. Yeah, I feel like people are always like looking back at their younger days as being the good ones. And then as you get older, it's like you lose, like the way that society tells it to us, it's like you lose value. And it's like, you know, your mid-20s, that's where it's at. You know, being in your 20s, that's where it's at. That's the kind of youth that we all want to have and that we want to maintain. And then after that, it goes downhill. That's kind of like what we're taught. But in this video, it's like the opposite. In this video, life kind of becomes better in a chronological order.
Yeah.
It starts off shitty, you know, like there's 3 versions of myself. There's a child version, there's an adult version, and then there's the 20-something version, which is played by myself. And then the child version, she's wise, but she's pretty sad. It's just showing that childhood is not always like a beautiful thing to look back on. And then the 20-something version is completely lost and only looking back and looking forward. But she's never really in the moment. She doesn't appreciate who she is. And then you have the adult version and she's like content. She's good. She's like, yeah, I've made it. This is what making it looks like. And then there's like the adult and the younger version eventually coming together and talking to each other like, hey, I used to want to be exactly like you and you keep wanting to be like me, but I like you better, you know?
Yeah.
We both like each other better, so maybe we should just enjoy who we are right now. And that's when like the present version also disappears. So it was a very beautiful video to make, and it was funny to like make all 3 characters look exactly like me, you know? Also with the makeup and it was healing and it was beautiful and it was very fun. And I feel like on my videos have always been very meaningful, and this one is also very meaningful, but it was also fun, and that was a good thing for me to do. As I said, as I feel like I'm finally becoming younger, you know, now that my life is becoming stable. This was like my shot at being young.
I love it. Do you feel like now you're able to be more present and appreciate who you are in the moment?
Yeah, it's still difficult because you have the world, like the like societal pressures that are not even from society, because I feel like everyone goes through these pressures and we're just like expressing them towards each other, of like feeling that you need to run faster through life and therefore still not really being able to be with who you are. I feel those things, and I have a hard time, you know, with the things I've gone through, to be able to sit still in the present and be proud of who I am right now. I still get like a lot of, you know, flashbacks and memories of how things used to be, and it's still very hard for me. And yeah, I find it pretty hard to be in the present. And I also notice that when I write songs, they're always about trying to overcome something. So I'm
Yeah.
still in the process of overcoming my past, and learning
Yeah.
how to be in the present. So that's my honest answer.
Um, Speaking of trying to overcome things, you have a new song, Remains, which comes out, probably it'll be out by the time this comes out. When is it coming out?
Probably. It's in February I'm putting it out.
Okay, can you talk about that song? You sent it to me, which thank you very much for that. And I obviously everything you do is just incredible, and your vocal sounded insane. And I love the way you're able to, like, whenever you layer your vocals, it just sounds like heavenly. It is like, I just can't
Oh.
explain it in any other way. And the outro of the song nearly made me cry. But
Oh, thank you.
I would like to hear about what that song means to you and the whole creation process of that.
Wow, this is a beautiful bridge because I was just talking about how it's hard for me to move forward from my past. And this song is about that. It's called Remains. We all know what remains mean.
Yeah.
Um, it's what, remains of me. It's a song about when something terrible happens to you and that your brain, but only your brain, is like frozen in time ever since the traumatic event happened. So in the song I sing like my skin, it will wrinkle, my body will wither, but my brain and my heart will still be there on that day, will never be able to move on, and therefore I will be young forever. And therefore
Yeah.
everyone's jealous of me because I will never get older. And
Wow.
that's the song about how I feel forever young because I'm stuck in like a painful memory, and that's what this
Yeah.
song is about. And it can feel very lonesome. So at the end of the song, I made the outro that you just mentioned, where I wrote that outro a year later,
Wow.
as kind of like a way of soothing myself, because the outro goes like, it has the lyrics that says, "These things happen, it will happen again, it might happen to you like it happened to them." And then the song gets cut off at the end with, "It might happen like it happened," in a way of like, yeah, these things happen. It's not a lie. It's not like a fabricated story. Terrible things happen, and they happen all the time, and they might happen to you, and they will happen to other people, and they have happened to other people.
Yeah.
And I brought like these voices together and like purposely made them sing kind of off key, to kind of create that haunting feeling of reality, of knowing that,
Yeah.
yeah, terrible things happen, and people, will hopefully grow past it, but their hearts are still there. And that's,
Yeah.
you can't stop that. And we need to believe these people, and we need to believe these stories, and we need to, give our guidance, instead of, letting it remain in the past. We need to take it with us and help ourselves heal. And that's
Yeah.
why I made that song.
I think part of why the outro made me so emotional is, I think one thing that I tell myself whenever I'm going through something is that I'm not the first person to ever go through something. As much as you feel alone in whatever it is that you're going through, like, I don't know, people always say like, you're not alone, which doesn't ever make me feel any better. But I also, I often think like, regardless of how broad or specific the circumstances, there is somebody else who has been through this exact thing.
Yeah.
And it brings me a lot of comfort, because I'm like, okay, well, if they've gone through it, then, so can I. At the same time, I feel like there is also a little bit of sadness to it, of like,
Yeah.
why do we have to go through these things? But that is the course of life. It also kind of honestly made me think of Charlie XCX's song Apple, because
Oh,
it made me
yeah.
think, like, when you were saying like, it might happen to you like it happened to them, it also made me think about like, generational trauma and things,
Oh,
being
yeah.
passed down. And we hope that generation after generation that there will be fewer traumas that are passed down, but also the reality is that every generation, every time period, every place on this earth will always come with a different set of challenges, that even if you've healed yourself to the best of your ability and have tried not to pass anything down to your children, there will always be things that will happen to them regardless, because you can't protect them
And
from everything.
that's such a scary thought, but it is reality.
Yeah.
But it's such a scary thought. I mean, I remember getting a dog and being afraid that I would like pass on my like traumas from my mother to my dog, you know? Like I mean, it's
That's
a
real,
scary
though.
thing. Yeah, it's super real. Yeah, and also in relationships you don't want to be, you want to be good. And
Yeah.
sometimes you notice you take parts of, you know, your dad or your mom, like lesser good parts of them. And then you have to like really check yourself, like, oh, I want to break the cycle.
Yeah. Well, thank
Yeah.
you for making that song, because I think that there's a lot of people who are going to relate to it and have, you know, emotional reactions to it and see themselves in it. Is this part of like a larger project that's coming out? Is there like
Yeah.
an EP or an album?
An album. Yeah.
Lovely.
Yeah. Yeah. So, yeah, it's an album that I'm making. And yeah, just like putting out the songs and trying not to change too much as a human as I'm putting out the songs. This is something I find quite difficult as well. Yeah, because it's funny, like I released Sirens and then I got sad again, like, you know, like just
Yeah.
depression. And then I was like, oh my God, I released a happy song and now I can't be happy as I'm promoting it. So I feel like more comfortable now with Remains, because I'm like, okay, I'll always be able to find some sadness to like project into the song. Because I remember even like, I think it was a moment of weakness as well, where I felt like I needed to make more happy songs, because like, you know, you're kind of told that you need to be like fun. And yeah, I'm not that girl. Like, I am fun. I do think I'm fun. Like, my friends think I'm fun, but you know, I don't want to make fun music. I do love Sirens, because Sirens is like much more than just a fun song. But it was a good thing for me to realize. I don't think I would ever be able to be like a pop star, like really like do.
Yeah.
I think I just want to be like indie girl who's like super pretentiously sad, but then actually really sad, but then also fun, you know.
You know, this is reminding me of one of my favorite singers growing up was Christina Perri. She does like
oh yeah, Jar of Hearts. I remember
Jar of Heart, like depressed human. But I ate it up because I was like, like I don't know, I loved it. But her most recent album is called A Lighter Shade of Blue, and there's a song on there called Blue, and it's basically about her like being a melancholic person, and that's her third album. And on her second album, I think she had tried to do some like upbeat stuff, because she's like, oh, like I should have some up tempo, this and that, but she's like, that's not me. And so on her third album, she returned to some of her more like somber ballads, and she became a mother, and you know, lost a child, and just there's a lot of like grief and stuff that was expressed on that album. And I really love that song Blue, because it's her kind of coming to terms with who she is as kind of like a sad person. And
I'm gonna listen to that.
I think you'd really like it. And she basically is saying like, the like blue has always been my color, but like all that I can do is turn a lighter shade of blue. Like I will always be this like melancholic sad person, but you know, I can just try my best to be the best version of this kind of sad person, you know.
That's beautiful. Wow.
Yeah, it really is.
Yeah, I'm gonna listen to that.
Yeah, it's a good one. One of the last questions I want to ask you, this podcast is like centered around, you know, women and highlighting women musicians from around the world and across cultures. And I was wondering if there are any women in music that you kind of want to give a shout out to, or musicians that you are feeling really inspired by.
There's this new singer coming up in the Netherlands. She's part of a band. It's called Hickp. Hiqpy. And she's also a Middle Eastern girly, so obviously that makes me feel very, very proud. She makes like indie rock music, and it's so cool for me to see a fellow woman of color doing such a thing. So I'm very proud of her, and I'm very excited for her career to pop off. It's going really well. And then I always, like, when I think of really beautiful people in music industry who do very impressive things and are like producers and writers and performers and everything, I always think about Orla Gartland from Ireland and Dodie from London, just like these very authentic people who really have carved a space of their own in the industry. And I always think that's very, very respectable. Yeah, and I mean, this next artist does not obviously need a shout out, but I was talking today about how Ray kind of like changed the scene. She gave so much hope to so many artists. I'm so grateful for her because she's a true musician, and she's had such commercial success after such hardship, and she chose to go even more left field, and I think that's so cool. She's giving platform to areas of the industry that are not highlighted enough, and I'm so grateful. Like, she's the kind of artist that keeps me going, that keeps me being like, yeah, you should never let the industry or like any commercial success define you. Just focus on the musician you are and storytelling.
Well, thank you for all these recommendations, and thank you for talking to me today.
Thank you. This was really wonderful.
I'm very happy we got to do this. Where can everybody find you?
Well, sorry, I was gonna make like a in my house joke, but it's not funny but
so real.
This is my edge. No, well, they can find me on Instagram, on Spotify and Apple Music, like everywhere where music is released under my name Naaz. But my Instagram name is Bits of Naaz because I'm always different parts of myself, and I
love it.
Thank you. I made it up when I was like 18, and I was like, I don't want to just do one thing in my life. I want to do more things. I'm gonna be Bits of Naaz.
I love it.
So I'll be putting out lots of music this year, and we'll be putting an album out later this year, and I'm independent, so you might discover me hopefully through this, and that would be very cool. And I welcome you very warmly to listen to my little universe.
The best universe out there. Thank you so much. This was such a lovely conversation. I'm so happy we got to do this. To whoever's listening, thank you for listening, and see you next time.